Welcome to our video about the fascinating world of Pokemon and their placement on the Tree of Life. Today, we take a closer look at Poliwrath and its relationship with all amniotes as they are all part of the Tetrapod clade. Ready? Let's go! Land-dwelling vertebrates, or Tetrapods/Tetrapods, are a grouping in biological taxonomy of vertebrates that have four limbs, extremities. These quadrupeds include amphibians, amphibia, sauropsids, sauropsida, which include reptiles in the traditional sense, and birds, and mammals, including humans. Today, approximately 35,000 animal species are classified as tetrapods. Over the course of evolution, some groups of land-dwelling vertebrates have also conquered aquatic environments and the airspace as habitats. Due to adaptations to these environments and specialized lifestyles, the term quadruped is not always meant to be taken strictly literally. For example, snakes have secondarily lost all four legs. In birds and bats, and also in extinct pterosaurs, the forelimbs have evolved into wings with various structures. While amphibians, as the primitive tetrapods, live as larvae in water and transition to land only as adults, some representatives of the higher land vertebrates, amniotes, have returned to life in water, either partially, e.g., seals, penguins, or fully, e.g., whales, manatees, and some sea snakes. In seals, the feet have been transformed into flippers, as have the front limbs of whales and manatees, while their hind limbs have been reduced. Adapting to life on land requires a series of modifications. The paired fins of fish, such as pectoral and pelvic fins, transform into arms, forelimbs, with hands, 4 feet, or legs, hind limbs, with feet, hind feet. The basic structure of the inner skeleton of these limbs, comprising upper arm/thigh, forearm/lower leg, and hand/foot, was already established by their descent from certain fish-like lobe-finned fishes, e.g., Rhipidistia. New features include elbow/knee joints, wrist/ankle joints, and mobile fingers/toes. A primitive characteristic of modern land vertebrates is having 5 fingers/toes. Early land vertebrates, however, had more than 5 digits. Acanthostiga had 8 fingers, Ichthyostiga had 7 toes, and Tolerpeton had 6 fingers. In some groups of modern land vertebrates, such as certain salamanders, birds, even toed ungulates, and odd-toed ungulates, the number of fingers/toes has been further reduced either as part of specialized locomotion adaptations or as part of a general reduction in limb structure. Since the body experiences significantly less buoyancy outside of water, the skeleton must support the body's weight and compensate for compressive and tensile stresses transmitted from the limbs to the torso during standing and walking. To stabilize the torso, the vertebrae often have enlarged contact surfaces and shortened but robust spinous processes that serve as attachment points for strong back muscles. Together with the limb girdles and limbs, this creates a suspension bridge-like structure. The pelvis is firmly fused to the spine via the sacrum, while the shoulder girdle is connected to the spine only through muscles and ligaments. Nearly all fully grown land vertebrates absorb oxygen from the air using lungs, including ichthyosaurs, whales, and manatees, which have secondarily returned to obligate aquatic life. Body parts and organs useful only for permanent aquatic life have regressed: unpaired fins, gills, branchiostegal apparatus, operculum, gill cover, and the lateral line system. An exception to the presence of, albeit free and unprotected, gills and a lateral line system is seen in the primarily aquatic larvae of amphibians. Only a few amphibians that remain aquatic even in their adult life stages, such as clawed frogs or the axolotl, retain their lateral line system and or breathe throughout their lives via gills. Due to the reduction of the operculum, the shoulder girdle is no longer firmly connected to the skull. As a result, all land vertebrates have a more or less pronounced neck. For perceiving airborne sounds, land vertebrates possess a middle ear. It corresponds to the spiracular pouch of lobe-finned fish and is closed externally by a tympanic membrane. Vibrations caused by sound waves moving the tympanic membrane are transmitted to the inner ear by a bony rod called the columella. The columella corresponds to the hyomandibular bone of lobe-finned fish, a relatively large bone by which the jaw apparatus, including the palate, was movably suspended from the brain case at the jaw joint. The functional shift of the hyomandibular bone was made possible by the more or less rigid connection between the upper jaw palate complex and the brain case in land vertebrates, which in turn was enabled by the reduction of the gill apparatus. Mammals have, in addition to the columella, stapes, two additional auditory ossicles derived from lower jaw bones, the malleus, hammer, and the incus, anvil. It was once believed that the ancestors of land vertebrates were coelacanth, preserved today as fossils, that crawled ashore from the water on four-stalked, muscular, and lobe-like fins during the late Devonian period. They were thought to have moved short distances on land, driven by the drying up of water bodies, which forced these fish to seek out new habitats. The fins used during these excursions onto land were believed to have evolved into the legs of amphibians through macroevolution. According to more recent findings, the first animals systematically classified as land vertebrates, whose descendants eventually conquered the land approximately 365 million years ago, still lived in water, meaning their legs developed in that environment. The true ancestors of this group were relatives of lungfish, which moved with four already limb-like appendages on the vegetation-covered swampy floors of freshwater habitats. For instance, the roughly 365-million-year-old, fish-like Panderichthys possesses bones that reveal its close relationship to land vertebrates. Acanthostiga also demonstrates that the four limbs of land vertebrates evolved in water. Its forelimbs and hind limbs were structured in a way that would not have supported its heavy body on land. Additionally, Acanthostiga still breathed through gills rather than lungs, clearly identifying it as an aquatic animal that moved in water using four legs. Frogs are by far the most species-rich of the three extant orders in the vertebrate class of amphibians. The other orders of amphibians are salamanders, Caudata, Eurodila, and Sicilian or blindworms, Gymnophiona. Most frogs, without any closer taxonomic relationship, are commonly referred to as frogs. Frogs also include toads and fire-bellied toads. The terms frog and toad are not systematically defined. A frog is generally understood to be a relatively slender, agile amphibian with smoother, moist skin and strong jumping legs, for example, the genus Rana, true frogs. In contrast, a toad is commonly considered to be stocky and robust, with drier, warty skin. Their comparatively short hind legs are used for hopping short distances and walking on all fours, for example, the genus Bufo, true toads. In reality, these distinguishing features often blur and cannot be confirmed in amphibian taxonomy. Fire-bellied toads, however, can be more clearly defined and systematically classified. A fire-bellied toad is an evolutionarily primitive, small amphibian with a flattened body, a warty back, and a vividly colorful, yellow or red, marbled underside. Fire-bellied toads belong to the genus Baumina. Unlike salamanders, frogs only have tails during their larval stage in water. With metamorphosis into a land-dwelling animal, the tail is reabsorbed. Depending on the development of their hind legs, which are significantly longer than their front limbs, frogs move by walking, hopping, or leaping great distances. Some are excellent climbers, others burrow into the ground, or live permanently in water. The skeletal structure of frogs, like all amphibians, is partially reduced. For instance, they lack ribs except for a few species in the suborder Archaeobatrachia. The shoulder girdle of frogs, unlike salamanders, is ossified and includes a clavicle. The pelvic region is particularly robust and features limb attachments positioned far back to provide the leverage and thrust needed for jumping. The skin can be smooth or warty. It is interspersed with mucus glands that keep the surface moist and enable cutaneous respiration. Many species also have body glands that produce toxic protective and defense secretions. Pigment cells are responsible for the diverse coloration and patterns. The largest species, with a verified head-to-body length of 33 centimeters and an estimated length of 35 to 40 centimeters, is the rare West African Goliath frog, Conroa goliath. In contrast, several miniaturized species scarcely reach 1 centimeter in size as adults, such as the Brazilian saddleback toad, Brachycephalus didactylus, the Cuban Monte Iberia frog, Eleutherodactylus iberia, the Malagasy narrow-mouthed frog, Stumphia pygmaea, and the Seychelles frog, Sachelophrine gardineri, which are also among the smallest terrestrial vertebrates worldwide. Metamorphosed frogs are exclusively carnivorous, typically feeding on live insects, arthropods, mollusks, and spiders. Frogs are found on all continents, except Antarctica, and on many islands, from cold temperate to tropical zones. The biogeographic Holarctic region is relatively species-poor, while the hotspots of species diversity are particularly in the subtropics and tropics of the neotropical region, Central and South America, and the Old World Paleotropics, Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa. The evolutionary origin of frogs and other modern amphibians, Amphibia, has not been fully clarified. It is generally assumed to be found within the group Temnospondyli. Gerobatrachus, a late Permian temnospondyle from the family Amphibamidae, exhibits a mix of frog and salamander characteristics, mosaic form, and might be close to the common ancestor of frogs and salamanders. Zaccobatrachus from the early Triassic of Poland and Triodobatrachus from Madagascar already display distinct frog features. Both are classified within Salientia, a superorder of amphibians that includes modern frogs and primitive fossil forms. Some modern frog families can be traced back to the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods based on fossil finds. Glass frogs, Centralenidae, are a family of New World frogs that inhabit tropical rainforests ranging from southern Mexico in the north to Bolivia, southeastern Brazil, and northeastern Argentina in the south. Glass frogs are anatomically distinct from all other frog families due to a fused calcaneus. They are usually green on their dorsal side, while their ventral side has transparent skin, making the heart, digestive system, and developing eggs visible from the outside. Except for the gecko glass frog, Centraline geckoideum, which can grow up to 8 cm long, most glass frogs remain smaller than 3 cm, some even reach only 1.5 cm in body length. They resemble tree frogs and, like them, have adhesive pads at the tips of their limbs that enable them to climb. Particularly striking are their often very large, highly protruding, forward-facing eyes with horizontally slit pupils. That's it for now. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look at alakazam and its relationship with nine tails. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, leave a